In the last episode, we were talking about why people with ADHD find it harder to go to sleep and my favorite tips and tricks for sleep. If you haven't heard that episode yet, I would recommend going back, listening to that, and then coming back to this episode, because this is going to be built on top of what I said in the last episode. Before we start, little ADHD tip for you. Do you also find it physically painful when someone speaks too slowly? When your brain is moving so much faster and you have to wait for someone to utter every single word when you already know how they're going to finish the sentence? Did you know that you can increase the playback speed of your podcast episodes? On Spotify, for example, or on YouTube, you are able to speed it up without losing voice quality. So there you go. Let's begin. On that note, I have a little bit of a plan, which I'm not sure yet if I'm going to follow through on it or not, but I hope I will. I want to do a self-experiment and I want to share it with you, take you with me on the journey. I want to make quite a strict plan for myself for like a month. Like I want to plan which time I go to sleep, when I wake up, what I do on each day, from when to when I'm working, in an attempt to create flow state. You might have heard of this before. Flow state is what happens when you do have a routine, when your it's linked to the circadian rhythm and everything. If you have a daily routine that is more or less stable, your body is able to prepare you better for each part of the day. Like if your body knows you always go to sleep at midnight, then your body is going to be a little bit more intentional about making sure that you go to sleep at midnight. But if you, of course, sometimes go to bed at 10 p.m., sometimes at like 6 a.m. like me, then your body's like, what? Right, okay, let me tap into that real quick. We're talking about circadian rhythm, because I just came from a therapy session and spoke to my therapist about sleep. She's so great. I love my therapist. Also, on my way to therapy and on my way back from therapy, I was listening to Matthew Walker's book, Why We Sleep, because I mentioned it last week in the episode and realized, I haven't actually read it. I mean, I've heard podcast episodes with him. I've heard him speak a lot on the topic, so I know that he's very knowledgeable about it, but I hadn't actually read the book. So I'm doing that right now, and I can still really recommend it. I'm only into the second chapter, and it's not all groundbreaking. Like I've heard a lot of what he's writing or saying before. Well, I actually heard him say it before, but that doesn't matter. It's still really good to hear these things again and to actually have like the facts and have it fed to you in a very simple way. Also, you know what? Like, especially with ADHD, I love listening to things a few times. Sometimes I will plan to listen to it again, but then I won't listen to it again because I forget. But I often feel like I have so many thoughts and tangents that my brain is going on while I'm listening to it that I'm actually missing what they're saying, or I'll miss a completely other train of thought. So I could maybe this is why people with ADHD can watch the same film over and over again. I know that this doesn't apply to all ADHDers, because I know some ADHDers that hate watching the same thing again and again, but I love it. It's like comfort food. It's like, when you start becoming obsessed with one type of food. I actually don't have that as much, but I know other ADHDers do. You're obsessed with one food, you eat it all the time, and then you're sick of it, and then you can't touch it for another few years or something. But I think the reason why we maybe can watch films over and over again is because there's so much happening in our brain, and we can only kind of choose like one path, one train of thought. So when we watch it again or listen to it again, we have all these other trains of thoughts that we could go down. So each time it's a new experience. And also listening to it again will just cement the knowledge into your brain more. So I liked doing that, especially with more scientific things that I really want to remember. Or what I'll do is I'll maybe listen to something while I'm going to sleep, or I'll listen to it while I'm in the sauna or in the gym or whatever, and then realize, hang on, okay, I fell asleep at this point, or I missed that, and then I'll just go back a chapter or something to just recap, and that will also refresh my memory. I'll be like, I totally forgot about that. That's actually such a cool fact. It's like learning it again. You have the joy twice. But yeah, just came from therapy, came from listening to the audiobook in the car, and she again said how important it is to get the sleep schedule on track, because I already knew that, obviously, but this is the point that I feel like I didn't make clear enough in the last attempt that I made of this video. It's when you go to bed is not as important as regularity. This is not what my therapist said. This is what I've heard like what Matthew Walker says and what a lot of other sleep experts say. It does also matter when you go to bed, but with all the knowledge that I have, it seems that regularity is first priority, and then getting to bed early enough is second priority, but still high on the priority list. Very important, very urgent. Important and urgent, because you're going to get better quality sleep if you have the regular schedule, because the brain waves need to like adapt to get into the new pattern. It's like if you don't have a regular sleep schedule, it's like you're constantly in jet lag. Your body is constantly unsure of, I don't know if you ever have that, but I have that so often. Maybe it's also because I travel around so much and I move to so many different countries all the time, that I will, especially in a sleepy stage, be so confused. I will be confused about which country I'm in, what year we're in, how old I am, what time of day it is. Like, is it 5 p.m. or is it 1 a.m. or is it summer, winter, spring? Which planet am I even on? Like, seriously, I'm like, what is reality? It's scary. It really is scary. And I feel like this has increased since when I was in Glasgow experiencing re-traumatization. Obviously, that didn't help because it basically made me lose my sense of reality. I didn't know what was real anymore. I didn't know who to believe anymore and what was fact, what was my assumptions. My whole worldview was basically shattered, and I can still kind of feel the effects of that. But I do think that I had similar experiences before. They just got a little bit more intense. But even then, it's also, I'll have those experiences when I'm in a mode of changing. For example, when I finished high school, I was like, okay, I can literally do anything in the world. Like, I am no longer obliged to go to school every day. What the hell do I do with my life now? I kind of knew, but also it was just like this whole big new chapter opened itself up to me. And I was really confused about what needed to be done, where my priorities are. Because again, we struggle with prioritization, and obviously that applies to everything in our lives. It's not just like at work, you can't set priorities, but you don't know if you should go to the bathroom first or get that glass of water that you've been meaning to get. I'm sure there are better examples, and I think that it feels very similar in terms of my brain is struggling to find and prioritize points of reference, like what is important right now. People often laugh at me if someone asks me what year it is. It'll take me a while to think about it, and then I also won't be 100% convinced that this is true, because my brain has fooled me before, especially when sleep deprived. That does not help at all. But yeah, I find that so funny because I'm so surrounded by neurodivergent people. I often forget what neurotypical people are like. And then when I struggle with these things of like, what year is it? They're like, how, Sophia, what? How do you not know what year it is? There's a meme of this Uber driver and the car is just way over in the blue and not on the ground. And then they get a text from the Uber driver saying, I'm lost. And then there's a picture of where Ron and Harry are driving in the flying car and are like, that's how I feel quite often. As in, I feel like the Uber app where I'm just like recalibrating, kind of like, wait, it's like I'm a robot and I just briefly forgot my programming. Getting back to the point of how sleep can make this stronger. And that explains why this happens to me more when I'm in transition periods, because I have a new schedule. Maybe I have a new job, or I have a new lifestyle. Like maybe I'm not working anymore and now I'm at uni. So I have to get used to different dynamics or different ways of how things work. And my brain just needs a moment time to get used to it. And then also often my sleep schedule is going to be a little bit, and that's what I mean with flow state. Oh my God, how the hell am I going to edit this together into a cohesive video? How do people listen to me? Is this how I always talk? I mean, okay, I have ADHD friends, so they would have interrupted me an hour ago because I've been talking for an hour and 6 minutes. But I'm like, I often feel like they're like, what? Like, what? But an ADHD is like, oh yeah, absolutely. Flabberdu. Sure. Can you tell that I'm sleep deprived? So, to reiterate, getting to bed early is important. It's very important. See, I already have the next tangent I want to go down. You do get a better night's sleep earlier at night. Humans are not programmed to healthily go to sleep after, let's say, 3 a.m. And I'm being generous here. Even if that was a regular sleep schedule, like going to sleep at 3 a.m. and waking up at 11 a.m., even if you did that every single day. That's still better than having a completely scattered sleep rhythm, but even that is not as healthy as if you would go to sleep around midnight. That doesn't mean that you have to become an early morning person. No one is making you an early morning person or anything. But, and this is what my therapist called me out on today. She was like, you can't, like, yes, people with ADHD have a moved circadian rhythm, but if you just always say, oh, it's okay because I have ADHD, I can just stay awake all night and sleep during the day, that is still unhealthy. We still need to get to sleep at a reasonable time. But the difference is just, are we going to bed at 10 p.m. or are we going to bed at midnight? And getting to bed at midnight is actually an achievement for me. That's actually early for me. But that is still what I need to try to train myself to do. Even though, like yesterday, for example, I started, after the TikTok live, I lay down in bed, but I started having all of these ideas. And often what I'll do when I have all these ideas is I will grab my phone and record a voice message to sort of brain dump. And it actually gave me an idea for a sort of series within this podcast called Midnight Whispers, because I'll often speak quite quietly because I don't want to wake up anyone else in the house or in the flat. But I'm actually going to try, I want to do that later. I want to buy a better microphone so that I can easily record with my phone whenever I need to. Those episodes will also not be video episodes because I'm literally just going to be taking my phone and recording on the spot, because I'll just get like this one burst of inspiration and I feel like it all needs to just come out now. And then I don't even have even though like my bed is literally like right there, by the way, I could just turn my microphone around, open my laptop and be like, let's record. But I also don't want to do that because ultimately I want to sleep. But then I'll end up talking for like half an hour to an hour. Or I think I've even managed to talk for like 2 or 3 hours before. But I do feel like what I'm saying is kind of interesting, and I hope it's of interest to you as well. Also, just in case you didn't know, the reason why we do this is because people with ADHD do verbal processing. This is also the reason why we like talking to people and why we talk so much. And I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but I have it all the time that when my brain isn't braining, I will just need to go speak to a person about it. Usually my mum. I love talking to my mum about stuff. I love my mum. I will just walk into a room and I can just talk and talk and talk and I'll solve my own problem. Just because I had to say it out loud and I have to have someone listen to me to be like, to just somehow something happens in the brain with that, because we verbally process. We can't process as well just in our own brains. Probably, I don't know if this is true, but I'm guessing the reason why we prefer verbal processing over thinking in silence is because when we think in silence, it's like you're in a noisy room and there's several people saying different things at the same time, and you will constantly go off track and think about different things, and it will just all get a little bit convoluted. Whereas if you talk to a person, you actually have to make it make sense. It somehow has to be a string of thought, like in German we say the rote Faden. Do you say that in English? Like the red thread? The red thread. Did I take my medication today? I think so. Yeah, I think so. That's why I really like recording voice memos. And I recommend that for you as well, by the way, not just for content creators. Like, yeah, it's kind of a bonus that I can probably also upload a lot of it. And hopefully that will be of interest to people. But even just to brain dump, it does help to just sort of to get some sense into your brain, and also to not feel like, oh shit, I'm going to forget this by tomorrow morning. I need to write it down. Like, writing something down involves a lot more brain power for me, and it's going to probably wake me up more than if I just talk. I also just can't write fast enough to keep up with my thoughts, so I just rather speak. But even then, like, I'm noticing now when recording this stuff, because I'm just speaking to my phone and I know that I can edit it later, I'm just speaking in quite a chaotic way, and I'll be like, okay, so I'm going to say this thing now and then I'm going to edit it in later, and I'll be able to make sense of all of it, and then I'll be in the edit and I will be regrets. How on earth? This is almost an episode on its own. Probably the most chaotic that I've recorded so far, because yeah, that's kind of also where I wanted to get at with the whole Midnight Whispers thing, is that I like just thinking out loud and sharing my thoughts, even if they're a little bit chaotic at times. If you feel like that's something that you would enjoy listening to, then please do let me know in the comment section on YouTube, or if you're listening to it on Spotify, then obviously on Spotify. Other platforms, I'm not even sure. I know that my podcast is on other platforms, but I don't actually know how to access the comment sections of those platforms. I should go check that out probably. But yeah, if you're listening to it on a different platform, then get in touch with me on Instagram. I'm at Sophia_Ralston. Because honestly, that's why I started a podcast. I do, of course, have imposter syndrome around, I've not studied this, so do I have a right to speak about it? I do believe that I do, for reasons I won't get into now. But the thing is that I don't necessarily want to be an educational content creator. I want to let you be part of my internal journey, my thought processes and observations about life with ADHD, rather than making every video incredibly scientific, incredibly to the point, teaching you everything about a certain topic like I did with the sleep episode. It just doesn't feel right, and it doesn't feel like that's my forte. I feel like I'm better at just talking. And I also think that that's probably more valuable to a certain degree, because a lot of the information that I could bring to you through a lot of hard work, other people could do with a lot more ease, and it's probably going to be even more accurate because they probably have studied it. So I would rather give you my outside of the box perspective. But let's stick to the point. I want to do a little self-experiment where I plan out the next 30 days and stick to a very strict schedule. My therapist did tell me to not implement too many things at once, like try and add one thing to your routine and then go on, like don't overwhelm yourself, because us with ADHD, we like doing everything at once immediately because we'll have the motivation and we want all the dopamine to hit us at once, but that's not necessarily going to work. It's actually very unlikely that it's going to work because it's going to be unrealistic and you won't be able to implement all of the stuff, and then none of it's going to stick. At the same time, I don't know if it's going to be much different with one thing, but I want to see if I actually keep myself accountable by doing this vlog, then that might trick my brain into actually committing to the full time. And I think it's like, it takes 28 days. Is it only 28 days? Wait, before I say something wrong, I'm going to Google it. So, okay, I just put this into Google. That's HubSpot blog. I don't know how reliable that is. It says here something about a study from the European Journal of Social Psychology found an average of 66 days was required to form a habit, with a range between 18 and 254 days. Right, so I can't math. Math isn't mathing. I feel like if Gen Z keeps talking like this, people are actually going to think that this is correct grammar. Who knows, maybe it is going to become correct grammar. So it can basically take you anywhere from 3 weeks to more than half a year to form a habit. But apparently the average is 66 days. And I think I read similar numbers on other sites as well. I think, you know, each study is going to say something slightly different. But I think I once heard 28 days. You know, like for example, if you want to stop smoking, then you need to just commit to not smoking for 28 days. And then it's just going to be so much easier. And it's easier to tell yourself, I'm going to make it at least this far, and then anything that happens beyond that doesn't matter, is easier to say than I'm never going to smoke again, because then that's just unrealistic and you don't have a goal, you don't have a milestone goalpost. Goalpost, is that a word? Anyway, so I am going to make a plan for the next 30 days, not starting from today, but like as soon as I actually get around to making the plan. And I'm going to keep track of it, document it, and I want to see if I'm able to get into a more regular circadian rhythm, as in if that is going to improve my sleep and help me get into flow state. Because not only do I feel disconnected from reality in terms of geographics, like I don't always know what country I'm in, I also get confused about what stage of life I'm in terms of like, am I working right now? Am I not working? Who are my friends? Am I in a relationship? Is this still an issue? Is this not? My brain is just very confused about what is actually happening to me right now. And that also doesn't really help in terms of getting into a productivity rhythm, because this is the next step of, well, not the next step. It's like sleep is the ground zero of health. Does that expression make sense in this context? It's the fundamental layer, basically. You can build on top of that. And I want to be able to be productive in a way that I can get the most out of my time. I am my own boss, which is great in so many different ways. I actually have a point on that as well. I feel I have so much more liberty, and I haven't figured out yet what works best for me. So I can't make myself as accountable as if I could if I did. Is that sentence sentencing? Please don't hate me. This is going to drive me crazy. I'm going to do it for like 2 episodes and then be sick of it. You know, if some people know that they can work very well, they work best in the morning, for example, so they'll make sure that they get up, start working at 9 until like 5, and then have the evening to do whatever. Whereas I'm like floating in time and space. I have no obligations. I have no idea when to start. And I will just be like, okay, I know I need to get a solid day's work done. Just somehow half the day vanishes and I haven't done anything. And I do compensate for that by working weekends as well, or working certain nights. Like, I know that I don't have to have a 9 to 5 schedule. I know that I don't have to work during office hours. Absolutely. The beauty of being an entrepreneur. I never know if I'm saying that right. Entrepreneur? Because I only hear Americans say it. Entrepreneur. Entrepreneur. Being an entrepreneur or self-employed, somehow independent from a work schedule, absolutely work whenever you want. But this is exactly what I'm saying. If I just sporadically work whenever, then I'm not going to actually get work done. I can't hold myself accountable. So basically that's what I'm trying to figure out. And I want to see if I make this schedule for myself, if I can uphold it, and if it improves my productivity, if I'm able to get more done. We'll see. And I'll let you know. It kind of feels more honest in a way to give you content like that, because again, by listing all of these tips and tricks on how to get a better night's sleep, again, I've been trying all of them and it still hasn't helped me. It has helped me sometimes. There have been times when I have been able to get into a better sleep rhythm, but I don't think that anything that I said in the episode has solely achieved that. I think whenever I have been able to get into a better sleep rhythm, it has been a factor of several different things. Of course, the pandemic didn't help at all either, because we had online classes so often. We had a completely irregular schedule. Apparently the classes before us were pretty much in the building 9 to 5, but we had a few sporadic lessons sprinkled through the week, and there was no structure, no rhythm, no regularity. So it was quite easy to fall into the trap of doing anything whenever, especially when surrounded by other neurodivergent people and being in a relationship with another neurodivergent person who also does not have a good sleeping schedule, which is ironic though, because when I was together with them, I actually feel like I had a better sleep rhythm just by having a partner and having another human being lying in bed next to me makes it easier for me to sleep, because it's sort of just like, okay, we are both lying in bed now. It is sleeping time. It could be something else time, but after that has happened, it is sleeping time, and it's a joint effort, and you don't then just want to get up and be on TikTok or do your own thing. It's sort of like body doubling, but for sleep. That's an interesting idea. There could be like an app, because ADHD love. Okay, I need to get in touch with Rich and Roxy, 2 of my favorite ADHD content creators called ADHD Love, recently released an app called Dubby, which is a body doubling app for ADHDers to be able to do like boring household chores. If you don't know what body doubling is, I highly recommend looking it up. Look it up! Because it can help a lot. So I should get in touch with them and tell them that they could add sleeping to the list. But I think of it more as like there needs to be an app. I hear so many great ADHD app ideas. For example, there should be an app where ADHDers can connect with each other and clean each other's houses, because we find it easier to clean someone else's house rather than our own. So we just, house swap. I say house. I'm living in Europe. We have flats, not houses. Well, rich people have houses. The rest of the mortals that we are live in apartments, or as I say, flats. Yeah, so there should be an app where you can connect with another ADHDer and be like, okay, we're going to go to bed at this time. We need to hold each other accountable, and actually somehow be like, I mean, I know that there are also apps where you can basically lock your phone from yourself, that you can't access it anymore after a certain time. I might try that out and let you guys know how that works for me. Because I know that some people turn off the Wi-Fi, but my phone plan has international unlimited internet. Like, it doesn't matter if I'm in the Wi-Fi or not. And I don't like limiting the access to my phone because I will have a random great idea and I really don't want to take pen and paper and write it down, because by the time I actually got out pen and paper, I'm going to forget the idea. I just need to be able to grab my phone, press record. You just got to press record, as they say in Think Media. So that's not necessarily something that's going to work. Also, most of these apps you can disable. And if you can't disable them, it's really annoying, because what if you need your phone? Was that the cat? Nope, that was my stepdad cooking. So a thing that my therapist said in terms of getting into a better sleep rhythm, because she was like, you need to get into a better sleep rhythm. I'm like, I know, how do I do that? She said, by getting into a routine. And I said, how do I get into a routine? She said, by creating rituals. And I was like, but how do I stick to that? And she said, by discipline. And I'm like, how do I get discipline? Something like that. And long story short, basically she just wants me to implement like one thing, or it ended up being two things, but just implement one thing that is always going to be like a wind down method of like association of the brain of like going to sleep now. But actually a really good tip that she gave me is, because for people with ADHD, if we struggle getting up in the morning and we get up a lot later than we're supposed to, our cortisol levels are going to continue to rise throughout the day. This is what usually happens, like cortisol, which is the stress hormone, by the way, will continue to rise and then has like its peak around afternoonish and then slowly go down again, which is also at some point the melatonin kicks in and then we get sleepy. And that's how like a normal cycle works. There's a lot more involved in that cycle, but that's just like two of the hormones. But for people with ADHD, our melatonin also kicks in later, but also if we get up later, then our cortisol is going to continue rising and rising. Basically, our cortisol levels are just going to be higher than they ought to be for the time of day that it is. So our cortisol levels are going to be peaking around evening, nighttime, when we should be winding down. So what she said to combat that is a technique is to have a cold shower in the morning. So that's something I'm absolutely going to be trying out and letting you know if that works, because I'm determined to find a way to make it work. I'm, as much as, again, all of these tips and tricks do help, but I am determined to find something that's even more effective than those things. And one of those things might be effective for you, because they have been for me at certain points. But of course, that only lasted so long. I want to build on top of that. And I want to analyze it more. I want to do more self-experiments. I want to... What do I want? What do I want? Provide you with the best possible knowledge that I can give you. I did want to add in 2 fun facts about the circadian rhythm. This is actually what I just learned in the audiobook from Matthew Walker, Why We Sleep. 2 very interesting points that he made were, there was a self-experiment. These 2 guys wanted to find out how dependent our internal clock is on the sun. So they basically locked themselves in a cave for, I can't remember how long, and were tracking how often and when they would sleep. What they found out was that the circadian rhythm is actually not naturally 24 hours. A lot of people actually have a longer circadian rhythm than that. Another interesting fact is that animals are not the only organism that have an internal clock. This actually also applies to plants. So they did a study where they put a plant in a completely dark room void of all sunlight to see if it would, you know, how plants do the... I'm just thinking of SpongeBob's like photosynthese, photosynthese. So the plants will like open when the sun is there to like get all the sun, and then when it's dark it will like close. They proved by putting this plant in a darkened room for a certain amount of time, don't ask me how long, they realized that it was still doing it, even though there was no light, no reference for the plant to have as to when it needs to open and close, which proves that the plant has an internal clock. I would love to know if plants can get jet lag, because, okay, the first thing that comes up on Google, which is not always the best to go by, but this seems legit. John Innes Center says, with his research covering circadian rhythm and signaling in plants, we asked him how do plants tell the time and if they have a circadian rhythm, whether plants suffer from jet lag, question mark. Yes, plants can suffer from jet lag. Interesting. I find that fascinating. I learned something today. I didn't just learn something today, I'm actually really happy about this little fun fact. Before I go, quick thing, I'm soon going to be doing a community chat Zoom type thing like I did last time. I'm not really calling it a Q&A anymore because it is often more of a conversation. I mean, why not? It's kind of a Q&A. Or I'm planning on it to be a little bit more like a Q&A this time. And the theme is going to be on sleep. So if you're interested in joining that session, please let me know. Best way to contact me is on Instagram at Sophia_Ralston, and I'll give you all the information that you need. I look a little bit chaotic today. Actually, no, I'm getting Helena Bonham Carter vibes. I don't know why, which I almost feel bad saying because she is a goddess, and the fact that I even compare myself to Helena Bonham Carter feels like sacrilege. I miss her face.